Up next on The Law at Work, we look at employment equity and how the laws surrounding equality affect your business.
Law at Work is sponsored by Perrett van Niekerk Woodhouse Macholo, leading labour law specialists representing businesses throughout South and Southern Africa, as well as Case Law, the quick, fast and easy labour law search engine.
Hello, I'm Simon Colman and welcome to another edition of Law at Work. South Africa has a rather shady past when it comes to issues of equality. Fortunately, our country has transformed over the past 13 years, much to the surprise of the international community. In today's program, we take a closer look at equality in the workplace. We're extremely fortunate to have Jimmy Manyi, Head of Employment Equity Commission, with us. Welcome, Jimmy.
Hello, Simon.
Jimmy, before we get into the details about equality in the workplace, perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about the function of the Employment Equity Commission. What exactly is its primary function?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I think the primary function of the Commission is largely to advise the Minister on everything on employment equity. It doesn't matter what it is. From A to Z, we advise the Minister of what are the things that need to happen around this. We also make regulations as a commission, so in other words, to unpack the law into usable bites.
Something that's easily interpreted by the businesses.
Exactly, yeah, so that's what we do. Okay. And we also make awards to companies that are doing well. And yeah, so like for instance, we would have a recognition function to say, well done, that kind of a thing. Just
here is a company that represents exactly what we want employment equity to be
so
about.
Those are things that we do.
Okay, now in terms of the, let's call it the not so pleasant side of employment equity, you heard when I was talking earlier about discrimination in the workplace. There seems to be very little making it through to the labour court system. Is there discrimination in the workplace in South Africa today?
Yeah, I think if somebody was to say there is no discrimination, that would be untrue. Clearly there is still a lot of discrimination in the workplace, but it takes various forms. Some of it is very subtle, and most of it is very subtle. Some of it actually, in my view, it happens without people realizing that they're actually discriminating. It's so embedded in the culture of excluding people that people don't realize it. For instance, the fact that there should be no women at the top management of organizations, that on its own is discrimination against women. But people may not see it that way. They may just think it's...
This is the way it's always been.
So that's right, yes. But that's actually discrimination against women. The fact that there are no black people is discrimination. The fact that there are no people with disabilities is discrimination. So it takes various forms. And the labor courts aren't flooded with this because two things. One is that the costs, and maybe before the costs, people sometimes feel that if they take these things to labor court, they will be victimized at the end of the day by the same companies. So people are very fearful.
After all, they're still working at that company.
They're still working at that company, yeah. So people are worried about the reprisals. So maybe the law is not protective enough in terms of if you raise issues, then what happens to you afterwards.
You almost expect something like the Protected Disclosures Act that would give some protection to these employees.
But unfortunately, you have to state the case and all of this, and you know, so people just fear that after this, no other company will want me in any case.
Jimmy, do you think that there's a possibility that there's a floodgate situation here? I mean, let's just say the courts have been conservative in dealing with these matters. Could that be because they are concerned that if there are one or two major awards made, that there'd be a potential flood of claims from people alleging they were discriminated against?
Not necessarily so. I don't think courts are worried about that. I really think the issue is that people are simply not forthcoming. So the issue is people are really not going to the courts.
Yes.
And I think also the issue around, you see, most people can only take cases to the CCMA.
Yes.
Now the CCMA cannot arbitrate on discriminatory issues. They can arbitrate on unfair dismissals and things like that are straightforward.
Yes.
But when it gets to these soft issues, like
more complicated
matters, you have to send it to the labor court.
Yes,
and this is where also costs get involved because you have to get representation. Now people that cannot afford lawyers don't take cases there.
Speaking about lawyers and the law generally, I mean, what does the law actually say about discrimination in the workplace?
It's prohibited. Discrimination in the work is prohibited. And actually, I think this is where the role of unions need to be even much stronger, because they at least form that call it bridge,
Yes.
so that you don't actually talk to the actual individuals that might be afraid of reprisals. So unions have got to really raise the matter with the employers.
A couple of weeks ago we discussed the issue of sexual harassment in the workplace, and it became evident in that discussion that there were grievance procedures in place in most companies in South Africa.
Yeah.
Should companies have a similar process for discrimination?
I think that would be great if companies could look at that similar process, so that the person that is aggrieved is sort of protected. At the same time, the issue is raised very sharply.
And if it's not dealt with internally, it could then progress to the Labour
right.
Court.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing that seems to be fairly contentious, and it's possibly the flip side of what we've been talking about, affirmative action in certain pieces of legislation is encouraged, and obviously it's allowed if it's furthering the company's responsibilities in terms of their employment equity plan.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on affirmative action in the workplace?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good thing. It's a very necessary thing. I think affirmative action will help South Africa to ensure that we don't get like some of our neighbors across Limpopo. It's a very noble process that is structured, and it's got a process, and it's all transparent. So I think it's a very good thing, and it should be promoted. It will help this country to transform in a very decent manner. So I think if you're against the affirmative action, you're actually looking for trouble.
Yes. There's been a lot of talk that in an effort for a company to meet its obligations, they've done what's perceived as window dressing. Do you know about this practice, and do you think it's still carrying on today?
Yes, it's still carrying on today. I think people don't even see it. It takes sophisticated forms. The forms it takes is, for instance, people that are in executive positions, so-called, and yet they still don't have decision-making powers, even on the roles that they play. People that cannot make even a 10,000 rand decision, but they call themselves executives. So those people are clearly window dressing. They've got no authority, no power to execute even their own mandates.
They're there in name only.
They're there in name
no
only, and when there's a minister to be organized, then they are right there in front. When there's PE credentials to be displayed, excuse me, then they are there in expensive suits, and they say, now I've got Jimmy here, and so on. You know, so really that's window dressing. So people need to be given jobs with a substance, and must be held accountable for the results, and must be given the necessary authority to deliver on the mandates that they're employed for.
Absolutely. Jimmy, thank you very much for joining us.
Okay.
I hope to have you on the show again at some point in the future.
Okay.
I hope that's been as informative for you as it was for me. That's all we have for now. Until next time, goodbye.
Law at Work is sponsored by Perrett van Niekerk Woodhouse Macholo, leading labour law specialists representing businesses throughout South and Southern Africa, as well as Case Law, the quick, fast and easy labour law search engine.